Hey everyone, welcome back. Again, this week we are taking a look at the different leading up causes to World War I. So, at this point, we've talked about industrialization. Last week we took a look at nationalism. And now this week we're taking a look at imperialism. Really, this is the big cause that we start to see a lot of nations at competition with each other. So, let's review real quick. Where were we at when we last talked? Okay, so when we left off, we were talking about industrialism, right? Where we saw that primarily things were starting in Britain. They had the resources, they had new sources of power, which were that coal, the wood, allowed them to use those resources to build up factories. Um, and we're starting to see this divide between developed areas and underdeveloped nations. We see people primarily moving into cities. We're starting to see less agricultural based communities, and now we are seeing cities with larger buildings, people who are making mostly textiles, which are clothing. Okay, so you can think of clothing as textiles, cloth, and other type of home goods. They're now available to the large majority of the world. So just a way of life had changed for the cities. But then you also see other parts of the world start to get left behind a little bit because they don't have that technology. They don't have mass education like there is in the cities. So we're starting to see a divide between different parts of the world. We also see this topic of nationalism, and this is where we really left off, is what is nationalism again? It's this extreme sense of pride in one's country. And I say extreme because it's taking it to this level of beyond patriotism, right? It's taking it to this level where you are willing to die so that way your country can be the best. And, at the heart of it, if it's coming from a pure sense, this is a really good trait to have. But when you are in a competitive world, like the world was during the era of industrialism, it can lead to some major issues. So we're seeing nations respond to this new growth, this new sense of pride in a couple of different ways. On one side, you're seeing some countries increasing the voice of their people. Take, for instance, Britain and the United States, where we're starting to see workers' rights, child labor laws, mass education for the general public. Okay, so giving voice to the people, educating them, trying to raise the standard of living. But then you also have some of these other countries around the world where they're taking the power away from the people and they're giving an increased sense of voice to the leaders, right? Think about Russia, think about Germany, Japan, China. Those regions during this time were worried about letting the people have a voice. They worried that if people became educated, that the control of power wasn't coming from leaders anymore, that they would lose their authoritarianism. And so they started to tighten their grasp on the way that their country was working. And both ways had major, major impacts on the way that governments operated, the economy, what that looked like, and again, that nationalism that we're going to see play a major role in going into our topics for today. So, the first one I want to touch on is imperialism, right? So, what is imperialism? It's that domination of one country over another, and it's going to be through political means, economic means, or cultural means. Most likely all three at the same time. Okay, so take for example Britain. Obviously, they were the powerhouse during the Industrial Revolution. They went into many other places around the world, such as India, parts of Southeast Asia, areas of Africa, okay? At one point, part of the colonies here in America, or what's now America, in order to use those resources, ship them back into the cities of Britain and use them for their own gain, right? They were running out. They were running out of these resources in their own land, and so they had to turn to other places throughout the world.
Ignore that text from Ryan. He's just wishing me good luck because I'm nervous about doing a text or a screen record. So reasons for imperialism. It's not necessary, right? But during this time it was necessary for them, or so they thought. So looking at it through those lenses of economic, political, um, why do we need to have imperialism through an economic stance? Well, you need more resources for all of the goods that you're producing at this time during the Industrial Revolution. And resources, raw materials are scarce, and eventually you're going to run out. So you have to go to other places where you can find those resources and be able to ship it back. Otherwise, your economy is going to stall. You're not going to be producing goods anymore. You're not going to be able to buy and sell, and that's going to hurt the economy and it's going to hurt the overall population. So, again, they went into other places around the world. And when you go to these other places, you find the raw materials that you need, you're going to protect those materials. So you have to protect them using military strength, political strength, treaties, right? With that, with the native lands that are there. So having strong political and military strength, that's going to also show that sense of imperialism. Interesting side of imperialism is that religion sense. A lot of times during this period, Europeans were able to justify going into these underdeveloped areas due to religion, right? A major theme of Christianity and Catholicism was that you want to go and spread God's word. You want to help save as many people as you can. And so these Europeans, primarily Christian, were sending missionaries or priests who would then go into these maybe more underdeveloped regions and convert them. And that was their goal, was converting them. And by converting them, they became a part of Western culture or European culture. And it allowed for a way for Europeans to get that foot in the door with those regions. Okay, so starting out seems like we're nice, we're here to provide you with help, but then it ends up turning that relationship sour because a lot of times those countries were taking their materials then away from them. And these native regions weren't making money off of their own raw materials. It was just taken. Okay? So take a look at this map here, right? This map is showing all of the different regions around the world that were once under the control of the British Empire. Okay, so everything that is in pink or that reddish tint, okay, so we see 13 colonies obviously were originally under the British Crown, Canada, even parts of Central America, South America, but then really we see parts of Africa here, India, Southeast Asia, Australia. Okay, those were all resources that were then going back into Britain to be made there and help the economy there. So, did everyone just lay down and let this happen? Obviously, no. People did try to resist these imperial actions. Okay, one example of that is the Salt March. This was a really big deal in India. It was led by Mohandas Gandhi, where during this time the British Empire had laws that wouldn't let Indian citizens go to the ocean side and collect natural building salt from the ocean when it would come in and build up salt that they would then use to cure meats. All of these different reasons that we need salt in our lives, right? So if Native Indians wanted to have salt, they had to buy it through the British Empire when it's just naturally building up on their shorelines. So because of this, there was outrage, there was protest, and Gandhi led this large group of people to the ocean side, breaking past British soldiers, possibly being shot at, and they went down to the side of the ocean and just picked up handfuls of salt. And just by doing this, it was breaking laws. It was a protest. It was deadly. It was a deadly action for them to take on. Whereas Africa, a lot of those tribes had already been weakened by the slave trade that happened primarily in the previous century, 1700s, 1600s. And so there wasn't a lot of strength there. Remember, they were taking the strong men. They were taking children because during the slave trade era, they were going to be worth more. And so a lot of different parts of Africa were weak. They didn't have strong men. They didn't have a lot of family ties to each other. And so there wasn't that organization that was able to happen. And they just didn't have the weaponry as well to be able to fight back against what was happening to them. European nations just inevitably were superior to all of these different parts of the world because of technology and just use of other people, their ability to go in and use other people. One of the ways that their technology was more superior to other parts of the world was the Maxim gun. And you'll see a picture of it here soon, but the Maxim gun was, think of it as one of the first types of machine guns, right? So if you go into a fight, you go into a battle, and you have people with swords on one side, and you have people with a machine gun on the other side. Obviously, one side is stronger than the other. Okay, and so as a result, we're going to see these, what we call the scramble for colonies, where these major European nations are going around the rest of the world trying to scramble and obtain these resources to help build their own countries. Okay, and this was set up originally by King Leopold II of Belgium. Not a good guy in the standing of history. You look him up and he doesn't really have a good light on him. So he primarily went into the Congo region of Africa. He had hired a man named Henry Stanley, and the job of Henry Stanley was to set up these treaties with tribes and to help people. And King Leopold had even said his mission was to, quote, carry the light that for millions of men still plunged in barbarism will be the dawn of a better era. So on the outside, it looked like he was trying to help these underdeveloped nations. He was making treaties with them, but privately, he dreamed of conquest and profit. Okay, and so because of him and his techniques of breaking down the tribes within the Congo and taking their resources, a lot of other Western European nations we're going to see start to fight one another for land in Africa. So this is the Maxim gun. Like I said, you can see how it's able to shoot off multiple rounds of bullets very quickly, hard to take apart. Okay, so obviously a lot stronger than the other technology and weaponry that was out there at this time. And to give you perspective or be able to picture him in your mind, we have here King Leopold II. He's there on our left. On the right side was an artist depiction of his actions and Henry Stanley's actions while they were in the Congo region of Africa. So not super great. So because of all these Western European nations starting to fight each other, okay, we've got this competition happening, they set up the Berlin Conference, where they're all coming together in order to agree upon how are we going to divvy out the land around the world, right? Trying to be civil at some level. And so they hold the Berlin Conference in Berlin, Germany, right? They kind of interesting because they're talking about how to divide up Africa, but they're hosting the conference in Germany. I'll let you make your own assumptions about that. Okay, so again, they're coming together. How do we discuss about dividing up the African continent? Fun fact, no African tribe leaders were invited to this conference. Okay, so they came out of this agreement, came out of the conference with having said, if you build an established government building anywhere in Africa, then you are going to own that land. Okay? So, because of this agreement, we see all of Africa partitioned off to different leaders of Europe. Okay, so now we have this entire continent of the world divided from people who don't even live there, who don't have any relationship with the people that are living there, other than the need for raw materials to help sustain their world back in Europe, because they'd already used it up. Right? So take a look at this picture. What ethnicity do you see of the people who are in attendance? Right? They're white. And we don't see anyone of African descent invited to this conference. Pretty messed up, in my opinion. So, we have to consider that, our heritage is not free of these atrocities either. Okay, we always like to think, oh, Europe, oh, this happened a long time ago, but we have to consider that our history is a part of this imperialistic idea as well, right? So a couple of examples of America dealing with imperialism is the Panama Canal. With the Panama Canal, that was a country, it's a strip of land connecting Central America, North America to South America. And during this time, if you wanted to trade goods from, say, New York to either the western part of America, North America, you would have to sail all the way around to the bottom of South America and back up. Takes a long time. Or you take a horse and buggy across the mountains, across all of the terrain, and hope to make it to the other side as well. Okay, so America had investments that would be helped by going into Panama, creating a canal which cut the trip in half. In order to get approval to start the construction on the Panama Canal, they ended up helping start a revolution in that country where the citizens went against the government. And by doing this, the US helped get new leaders in control of that country in return for that access to build the Panama Canal. Okay, so we weren't doing it to help them. We were doing it to help ourselves. Okay, obviously we also have to consider Native American lands, where we spread west with this idea of manifest destiny, going and helping the little guy, helping everyone, improving life for everyone. And we ended up taking a lot of Native American lands for use of people on the East Coast. We pushed a lot of Native Americans out of their home tribal lands. Okay, obviously not a good thing.
So what we're going to be taking a look at as we continue on is how did all of this lead up to the point where one little event could cause multiple different countries across the world to break out into full out war. Hopefully you're starting to see some trends here and understand how we even get to this point, but that's what we'll be taking a look at next week. As always, if you guys have any questions, please reach out. Please let me know. I'm happy to talk about these things with you guys. See you guys later.